Kennedy.
I'm handing out some information about myself so that we know who's talking to you. I believe probably some of the members of the council have heard my name. I'm Pete Sykov. Over the past 5 years, have purchased about 15 downtown properties, mostly commercial properties. I have had a long interest in historic properties and had the opportunity to come to Everett and begin purchasing historic properties, among others that I've purchased around Washington State, from Walla Walla to Port Angeles, Seattle, Tacoma, and most recently Spokane, Owensburg, and Pasco. One of the things that I've had an opportunity to do over time has been to purchase not only old properties, but sometimes distressed properties. I've purchased properties such as gang houses, drug houses, and boarded up buildings. And usually what I try to do when I do this is to bring a new sense of community to those neighborhoods, to bring in new people, new tenants who can reconstruct not only buildings and spaces to do business, but create new bonds and relationships among one another. I really was very happy that so far in Everett, I've been able to bring in tenants including Poppy's Pizza, Shivo's Bakery, Zippy's Cafe, Subway Sandwich. I'm the landlord for the Puget Sound Christian College, among others. My properties are mostly on Hewitt Avenue from Marine View Drive up to Broadway. The most recent properties I purchased in the last month included Mike Clark's attorney's office, and in December, November, the building that has recently been renovated into the Dirty Martini and the Jade House restaurant. I was not the landlord for the Jade House restaurant when I moved there, but bought the building afterward. Included among my properties is the old American Legion Hall, which is obviously a historic place of assembly. The Legion gathered there for many decades, having a good time, dancing, eating, visiting with one another. They rented out their hall from time to time to the Boy Scouts, to various religious groups. They had a number of different kinds of activities, including birthday parties and fundraising events, and so on. And now my tenant is the house, and I have given them about a year so far to be able to get up and running to do something with that old space. We've had a lot of problems dealing with the city because of the fact that it's been apparently an effort among some to redefine this place of assembly into something other than that, little by little, encroaching on the rights that people have to assemble there. There's been, from what I've understood, and I haven't checked this out, and perhaps somebody will want to, but even so far as threats against the proprietor to be arrested and jailed for allowing people to assemble there. And that concerns me greatly. Take a look at the existing use of that building and the historic use of that building. I think that we'll see that there's a problem if we are going to try and keep people from assembling there.
Mr. Sykov, are you suggesting that city staff has threatened?
I wasn't there firsthand. It's like I say,
Then I
second-hand
believe
information.
that we should leave that out of the testimony today.
I will let others testify to that.
If you would like to file a formal complaint, that would be one thing, but this is no place for this type of testimony.
Well, what I'm trying to do is move on with my testimony, so if you'll allow me.
Please do. You have 1 minute.
In trying to put together a community, I have found that the ordinance that was passed has essentially caused me to try to do it with one hand tied behind my back, and that's something that's a little different for me. That was in the first place that I've had that experience. Enough frustration has occurred that I turned all my properties over to a professional property manager, and I don't come to Everett too much anymore. and hopefully he'll have better luck dealing with the various bureaucratic entities in accomplishing filling up the vacant storefronts. But the problem is, among other things, the vacant storefronts, and I'll just give you a couple examples of why some of these storefronts are vacant. Just prior to the time that you initially put this ordinance into effect, I had been negotiating with a young man who's a native of Everett. He grew up here. He has become a tattoo artist. He wanted to put in a tattoo shop slash art gallery slash pottery kiln and clothing boutique.
I'll have to ask you to wrap up, Mr. Seifert.
I'm wrapping up now. He was negotiating this and would have been a great addition to this fabric that we're trying to create downtown to overlay the old fabric that you're familiar with of hotels filled with people who've come out of the jail and so on, the seedy bars that we're trying to change. And that's when what I call the unwelcome mat was put out. And he was told that there was a new law and he couldn't do what was his bread and butter, namely tattoo, which has become, I think, pretty widespread in society and is no longer associated with exclusively certain groups. But he couldn't do that, so he couldn't also then do the art gallery, so he couldn't also do the clothing boutique. And so we didn't have that particular person in our community. I'll wrap up. I have a variety of examples, and I'd be glad to talk to people about how this unwelcome map has created a difficulty in renting some space. If we're going to go from point A to point C, you have to go through point B.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
J.C. Kennedy, please, followed by Eric Krakora.
Hello, I'm J.C. Kennedy. I reside at 12814 311th Avenue Southeast in Fulton, Washington, not Everett. And as many teens can tell you, there's even less to do in Fulton than there is in Everett. On the odd occasion that I can come into Everett on Friday or Saturday nights, because the house isn't being allowed to be open to play live music, I sit outside Jimmy V's because that's the only place that I can listen to music. I end up sitting on the sidewalk with a bunch of smokers that are outside in between sets, and it's not a comfortable situation, but that's the only thing I have to do. And unfortunately, I can't get into Seattle a lot where there is all ages, and I know Seattle has struggled with the same issues. But if you're excluding teens from being allowed to assemble in one place, a safe place, then they're probably not going to want to stay here for very long. And as a teenager, I can tell you that we get bored and we do turn to alcohol and drugs and sitting on street corners, which I've heard many complaints about. So I just ask that allow us to have a safe place to go so that we can be happy, be with friends, listen to music. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a staff clarification. The house could exist on the second floor of the building. Is this correct? Thank you. But these items are really just the emergency ordinance before us is really relating to the main floor.
Great White Syndrome.
Okay.
Sprinklers on any other floors.
Eric Krakora, followed by Sue Beckley.
My name is Eric, and I live at 9309 15th Place, which is in Lake Stevens. And I just want to say, as a musician, the house has really been giving me a really good opportunity to play my music for an all-ages crowd that's interested in what I do, instead of having to play, for example, at Jimmy Z's out there for us, for teenagers like me that aren't 21. And like JC said, it's really not fun if you have to sit on the sidewalk to listen to your music, to listen to live music in there. And that's really all we have to do. And the house has given us a place to go instead of having teens do drugs or something. And like my friend Anthony, who's also a musician, my brother Jason, we've all had the opportunity to play there and for a crowd, and it's given us great confidence in our music, and I think it's just it's a great place, and it doesn't really need to be shut down.
Thank you. Sue Beckley, followed by Peggy Topol. Oh, I'm sorry, Peggy, you're for item 13.
Hi, I'm Sue Beckley, and I've been an Everett area resident for 30 years. I worked 22 years at Luther Child Center in Everett as a licensed marriage and family therapist. And I've also had my own office in downtown Everett for about 15 years now. So I'm very interested in the downtown area and in youth and families in general. So I share some folks' concern about the idea of limiting where people can gather. I know that there's a really nice momentum for developing downtown in a way that's going to really build us for the future, and I support that. But I think the idea that it just sounds pretty exclusionary to say that certain kinds of groups of people or services can't be held. No, I want to say that the letter that we received said map attached, and there wasn't a map attached. So the clarification that we were only talking about upstairs, we didn't get that. And I went online just last night and looked, and I couldn't find the map either. So, but and I read the comments of different people about concerns about downtown, and I know you're trying to address that, and I appreciate that. But like, I leave downtown at night as do my clients sometimes by myself, and I know some people are kind of concerned about safety, and some folks might have said that they felt kind of unsafe in downtown, but I think if we just increase a little police presence, like especially friendly police on foot or on bicycles, I think that could speak to some of that issue. But, folks get scared when they see tattoo parlors or certain kinds of establishments, but I think we need to have social services and food banks available. And as I said again, I understand there's just certain restricted streets, but this letter wasn't clear enough. But I think limiting places where people can gather breeds resentment. And I think I've worked with a lot of folks from very disadvantaged situations throughout 25 years, and I've seen a lot of them grow up and be very productive citizens of Everett. So I think we need to support everybody and allow people to gather.
Thank you. John Saylor Sanborn, followed by Dean Summers.
Good morning. I'm John Taylor Sanborn. I live at 2305 Baker Avenue here in Everett. Been here since 98. Been part of the community as far as my worship time since 1985. I am the executive director of New Life Prison Ministries, and we deal not only with the incarcerated at Snohomish County Jail and out at the multiple prisons throughout the state. We also deal with the families of the incarcerated and the transitional situations that are going on too. Our primary focus is community safety, and when I start looking at some of this, my concern said map attached. I made a phone call. I was sent at least a copy of the thing, but no map. I wasn't quite clear on where it was, but I got concerned when I started reading about restrictions of right of assembly or places of assembly. And as I read it, or as I understand this, if in one of the businesses down here we were to have some sort of a church service, we'd be in violation of this ordinance, especially if it was on the main floor. When I find that you can't have recreational, entertainment, religious, social, or civic purposes of a meeting place in downtown Everett, what is that saying to the community? The teens here, we have very little in this town for them. And I think we need to focus more on incorporating, as we've heard several people talk about, incorporating all aspects of the community and not limit. I mean, basically you're saying, well, they can go to the second floor, they can go to the basement. Does that mean they're second-class citizens? Why is this type of thing of some of this considered second class and not acceptable for our viewing on the street. Thank you.
Thank you. Dean Summers?